Okay, we have created a field called office city. So I have not given any values over there, right? Just I have selected one of the existing global pick list value as a city. Let's see how it looks the value. So see, we have the same list over here and same list over here. And problem is not a problem. The restriction is when you're trying to promote any of the existing pick list as a global value set, the pick list has to be a restricted pick list value. That means the other way around also, if you want to use any of the global pick list value, then the pick list has to be a restricted pick list. Then only you can configure a global pick list value. Okay, now we have a two pick list values, right? So I said like there are two ways of creating global value set. One is promoting existing of any of the pick list value which is restricted, that you can promote to a global value set, but you cannot promote to a existing global value set. You cannot do that. You can only promote existing pick list value to a new global value set, one thing. Or while creating of the field itself, you can choose the existing global pick list value. You cannot use the existing global value set to the existing pick list field. That is not possible. Okay, let's see what are the other way of creating a global value set. So if you search here, sorry, value set, it is pick list value sets. Here you see what you have already created, it's already there. If you want to create a new one also, you can do it. So I'm doing a state object values. Yeah, that's enough for now. Okay, this also you have how you want to display alphabetical or the given order. First value as default, everything the option similar to where what you have in a pick list. Here also you have, and you have options to replace any of the existing ones or reorder. If you want to have a different order, you can move to a different places and save it. And if you have a new values, you can add what are all the new values here. And then we have a printable view, and we have a chart colors and fix colors to the values dynamically. Okay, the feature is not available here, but it will be available in the classic maybe dynamically. Okay, this is also not here. So I'm going to explain you what is the classic view. There is actually Salesforce has started with the classic view, and I don't want to explain this why, because every org is moving to a classic to a lightning. So it obviously confuse you when I explain a classic and lightning everything. So something feature is not working here. So if you observe the look of page also a bit different, how it looks here and how it looks here, you see the difference, right? It looks like an old page inside, not everything. If you look at only from this border, it looks like an old page. And this looks a rich kind of a look, right? So wherever you see this kind of pages. These are all a classic pages. So what Salesforce is doing is Salesforce is migrating all his standard features to a lightning, but some of the features are still in a classic. So when you see a pages like this, it will sometimes fails to navigate like this. In those cases, you need to switch to a classic and do those things. Okay, so I don't want to do this now. So we'll come back later for this. Okay, moving on for the pick list one. So we have created a one more pick list. So there are the two ways of creating a global value sets. So there are different names you see. When you're creating a pick list field, there it's saying global value set. And where you see in the setup, it is saying a pick list value set. So you have to remember all these names. If you're facing any interviews, they might ask any of this, like what is the pick list value set, what is the value set, or what is the global value set. Simply they will say a part of it or a different naming of it. So you have to remember so that you can easily answer those questions. Okay, okay. So I have created a state here. Just I'm giving a description over here. Okay, moving on. So I'm going to edit object, and here let's create a one more pick list field using a new global value set called a state. So I'm going to use this as a pick list. You see pick list here, pick list, and then next, and I'm going to give like a state here, and I'm selecting global value set. There are two, city and state. I'm using a select as state. So this is a disabled, see here. So you cannot uncheck the restricted pick list value when you choose a existing global value set. You have to remember all this. Okay, I'm not making as a required field. Just moving on. Next. So I'm just going to the page layout to save some space over here. It's showing everything in a single column, right? So I want to save some space over here. I want to move this state, city, office, city to the right side. Just saving it. Let's see how it looks now. So you have a state, city, and office city. So if I see the drop down, you see all the values, whatever we say there. But thing was, let's see, I have a different states and a different cities. When I say Tamil Nadu, the remaining cities which are not in Tamil Nadu, it should not show up, right? It's even the user selects also, it's kind of weird if they look at. So I want to restrict some of these values based on the other value I have selected. Let's say if I select Tamil Nadu, I should only see Chennai and any other city which is belongs to Tamil Nadu state only, not anything else. So let's see how we can control this. So this concept is called as a field dependency. So how we can set when you're in the object manager and fields and relationships, you see the option called a field dependency. In field dependency, you can set one field as a controlling field, one field as a dependent field. So let's make these two fields as a dependent, controlling and dependent field. So controlling field would be, what should be the controlling field here? State. When I select state, then only we have to display the preset of a city. So dependent field will be city. Only if the select state, then only the city values will be populated. Sorry, I by mistake created cancel. Let me do it again. New controlling field is my state and dependent is my city. Continue. Okay, you said like it will be controlled. So what values will be displayed for what are the values in the state? So here you have this kind of a table. where you have AP, what are all the values you want to include in the AP, you can select. And Karnataka, anything is in Karnataka? No, right? It's Chennai here. Okay, so I'm using a control button to select multiple values, and then you can select include. And in Telangana, now Hyderabad is common for Telangana and AP, so I'm keeping it for now. So Maharashtra, is it right? Pune is in Maharashtra, and Delhi is in one of these cities. So moving on, so we don't have any cities in Karnataka, and we have only in these states. So if you don't select, it will, I think, ask for at least have at least one value to control, but it's not a mandatory. Now let's refresh and see how it behave now. Okay, I'm doing edit. So now I won't select any value. See, the city is automatically erased. Let's say if I select AP, see, I have only one option now. If you select Karnataka, we are not set any value for Karnataka, so we don't see anything. If I select Tamil Nadu, you see what is the value here. If I select Maharashtra, then you have Pune. That's how you can control the fields based on so you can bind two fields. One will be a controlling, one will be a dependent field. So that's how we can make a field dependency so that we can restrict the values from the selection. Okay, and then simple one, we're going to quickly cover this. So if you have any questions, we take after we covering the set history tracking. Okay, what is the history tracking? So we have so many fields. So some of the fields we thought it's going to be important, and whenever there is a change in that field, I need to have a track of that. That means if somebody is changing some personal information like contact information like a phone or email or any field, whatever you think it is critical, when there is a change, the process for this project will also change, or so many things in your project dependent on that key field. And you want to keep a track who changed, when it is changed, so that you will be you will be knowing it when it has been changed. So what could be the action of it, why it has been changed. So you need to do some analysis based on that, or like at least you want to know who changed, from what value to what is the value, and when it has been changed. You want to track any of this field, then you can enable the set history tracking. So when you click on the set history tracking, you will be the all list of fields available here, which can be traceable. Okay, then you see there are the two sets, or like two subsets of it. One is track old and new values, track changes. There are some fields which are allowed to be capture what is the new value, what is the old value, who changed, when it's being changed. Everything will be captured. For some of the fields, it is hard, or it will take more space to store both new and old values. Something like which is having a more text, the long text area rich, or multi-pick list values. It's being like so much of data to store. Like what are the internal reason for Salesforce? Salesforce will not provide you the values from what value to what value change. It will not provide that. It will just give the information who changed and when it is changed, not the values. Let's track some values and see. So I'm tracking the email field and a city field and state and about customer. So let's see how these section fields and this section will be differ. Okay, I'm just doing a save. Okay, even though if you save, there should be in a page layout also we have to add. This is also related to this record. Whatever happens to this record or whatever the data that is related to this record that you can place in this related list, how we can control the related list. If you go to a page layout, so there are so many options, right? We have covered only the fields. When you see a related list, excuse me, in the related list, that means what all the data that is related to this object will be shown like this. So now I want to have the history of a project. Okay, related content, nodes, groups, so approval history it's saying to the history. Let's not refresh at all. Just refreshing it. Page layout, related list. It should be a project history has to be shown here. Okay, let's see whether we have enabled the field tracking history or not. See here, the track field history was not enabled in this object. So we have to enable this checkbox as well. So when you say track field history for this object is enabled, then only you can track the fields. So now you can see it in the page layouts. In the page layouts, in the related list, you see the list called name of your project appended with the history. That will be the standard name for it. So let's drag and drop. And you drag this and save. Yes. And I'm refreshing this page. See here project history. It's showing there's no changes happen. So it will track only after you enable the fields. From that point only, it will start tracking the values. Whatever the changes happened before, it cannot track, right? So let's say I'm changing the state to AP and Hyderabad. I'm saving it. Great. Let's see whether it's been captured here or not. Yes, captured. When it has been changed, what field has changed, who has changed it, what is the original value, what is the new value. That's how the field tracking history will be there. But we have a limit for it. So after 6 months, the old history will be deleted automatically. So that's a kind of a restriction or limitation we have for the field tracking history. Okay, so we have seen some other fields are not trackable complete values, right? So you remember what we have tracked for this one about customer. Okay, so let's change about customer. So here about customer, we don't have any information yet. Let's say, yes, I'm putting some random text. Let's see how it will be captured. It's saying the about customer is changed at this time 8:01 p.m. and there's no original value, no new value. Both are blank. That means it is not capturing the new and old values or original values. It only capture who changed when it has been changed. So what are all the fields you see in the second section will be only trackable the time and user, not the values. So what are all the fields if you remember? Multi-select, text area long, text area rich. All those fields cannot be trackable with the new and old values. And if you observe, So one thing we have not covered is here. We have from starting itself, we are explaining all the custom fields only. But there are some more fields. If you look at this list, we have not created this field. This is not a custom field, and this is not a custom field. So what are all the fields? You see underscore underscore C are only the custom fields that you have created. But which are not having this underscore underscore C will be either standard fields or a system fields. Okay, what is the standard and custom fields? Standard field is the fields that are created by a Salesforce and can be used by us. That means you can give the values to it. So let's say the name field. The name field, you can enter the value right here when you create a new project or edit a project. This is what the project name is. Here we are able to change or edit or give the value, right? So even though it is created by the system or Salesforce, you can use those fields. Those are the standard fields. There are some fields which will, this is also a standard field, and I will give you the list what are all the standard fields where even though it is created by the Salesforce, you can change those values. But there are some fields which are created by Salesforce and the data also controlled by the Salesforce. You cannot change those values. Fields like created date, last modified date, those are all the fields. All fields are not displaying here. Okay, I'm going to show you one place where you can see all the fields. Okay, this is actually a development part where you can see the back end of the object. So developer console is nothing but a force.com where you have your everything code and all. So here I'm trying to show you this is the object. If you see here, just I'm trying to explain this as well. This is actually object what we created, and there is three more objects created. So when this object is created, this history is there, right? This history object is created when you have enabled the field tracking history on the object, and the data will be stored in this object. So we have the new value, original value, who changed, when changed, all this information will be stored in this object. You know what is object, right? It's kind of a table that is stored in a Salesforce, and it has some columns. Columns is nothing but a fields. Now we are discussing in those fields, some of them are system fields, some of them are standard, some of them are custom fields. Now this object what we have created, and this object what is created by Salesforce based on our settings. Okay, so we have change event and share. So I'm going to explain this later why, because we have not covered it. But now let's open this one object. When you open this object, you see so many fields here. What are all the custom fields you created? You can see what are all the standard and system fields also you can see. Now let's cover one by one. ID field. ID field is which is created by Salesforce, and the data will also be populated by Salesforce, and we cannot change the data. So it is a system field. And next one is owner ID. This is a standard field. Why? Because even though the field is created by Salesforce and populated by Salesforce, still we can change the owner ID of the record. It will store whoever creates the record. The user's ID will be stored in the this ID default, but you can transfer it to other users by changing the owner ID. That means whoever the owner ID in that record, he will be the owner to this record. And owner is different and created by is different. Even though you create the record and you can make other persons as a owner. Owner means he will get a access to it. That means whatever the record is being a owner, he'll have a privileges to do anything on that record. Okay, ID, we have explained Salesforce will generate a unique ID. It's a 18-digit ID that Salesforce will create for each record in Salesforce. So here the ID. So there is something I need to explain on the ID. We'll come back to that later. But it's a 18-digit ID. Is deleted. So in your system, when you delete any record, it will move to a recycle bin, right? So similarly, here also in Salesforce also, we have a concept called a recycle bin, where when you delete any of the record, it will move to a recycle bin and stay for a 15 days, and then it will be permanently deleted. Before that 14 days, sorry, 15 days, you can go to the recycle bin and undelete those records. So okay, when you're saying it is going to a recycle bin, so is there any other object present in recycle bin? No, still the data will be present on the object, but the location will be moved to recycle bin. And how we will be knowing it from an object is deleted flag. When the is deleted flag, by default it will be a false. When you delete the record, the is deleted flag will become true, and the data will be moved to recycle bin. How you can undelete or set this is delete equal to false is when you go to recycle bin and do a undelete, this flag will be turned back to a false. Or when you have a bulk data that need to be undeleted, so you can use the tools that you can extract all the data and then change this flag to a false, and you can save it again so that it will move from a recycle bin to a normal object, and this flag will be set as a false. How you can undelete in bulk means you have to set this is deleted flag from true to false. How you know what all the records deleted means, you have to search for is deleted equal to true. Okay, now so this is also a standard field, so we also can control the field, right, whether we can make it true or false. So this is also a standard field, and name field is also a standard field where you can use it only if it is a text field. The name field can be a text or an auto number. So if it is a text, you can do it. If it is an auto number, you can only read the values. Created date. Created date is also system field. So system field, that means whenever the record is created, it will populate the date and you cannot change it later. Why? Because created date means when it's created, we don't want to change. So Salesforce will not allow you to change the created date. And created by ID is also same. We cannot have a control. This is also a system field. Last modified date, same. Last modified by ID, same. These are all system fields. Okay, so these are all 5, and system mod stamp, these are all the system fields where we don't have a control or we cannot change those values manually. This will be tracked by Salesforce to identify when it's created, when it's last modified, what the last activities, timestamp, everything will be tracked by Salesforce by default for each record where we don't have control. So what are the standard fields? Those are owner ID, is deleted, name, or the standard fields in Salesforce where even though it's created by Salesforce, we have a control to change those values. Remaining all fields what you see are the custom fields ending with the underscore underscore C. Okay, so just covered, thought of covering it in last session, but somehow it had missed. So any questions?
I have just one question. So you said that there are two fields whenever the record is created by and the owner field, right? So
Correct.
whenever the record is created,
Mm.
uh, the created by and the owner would be the same, but moving forward, if I wish to change the owner, I can do that, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so whenever it is created, both of these values are same.
No. So that's what. So created by, it will always be same value. You cannot change those values. Even though you change the owner ID, the
Yeah, yeah.
created by ID will not be changed. So when you change
Mm.
owner ID, only owner ID will change.
Yeah. No, what I'm trying to say is at any given point, whenever you're creating a new record,
Mm,
the owner ID and the created by ID both are the same. But moving forward, you can never change the created by ID because it's set. You can never change that. But
mm,
owner ID can be changed, right?
correct.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Makes sense.
Yeah. Okay. Any other
Bala,
questions? Yeah.
Bala, one question here. If you go to that previous page, uh,
Okay.
yeah, so here it's showing with the name and data type, right? So for ID, the data type it is ID, right?
Mm,
And for owner ID, it is showing as reference, right? So
mm.
what is that mean?
Yeah, that's what we're going to cover tomorrow. So it's a relation to a different object. That is called a reference. That means it is ID of the field only, ID of the record only, but not the record from this object. This ID field is coming from a different object. That means a user. We have a user object. There also we have a Salesforce ID. It will store that ID. So who created this record? It will be one of the user in Salesforce, right? The Salesforce user's ID will be stored in a owner ID. That's what relation between the project and the other object in Salesforce that we are going to explain tomorrow. So when you see a reference in any of the field, that means it is a relation to the other object in a Salesforce. Even though it is storing the ID of any of the record, but it is not for this object. This is a different object in a Salesforce. The data type will be shown or apex type will be shown as a reference. Wherever you see reference, this is a relation with other object. Does it answer your question, Javed?
Yes, Bala.
Okay.
Yes.
Also, one quick question. So, whenever you were showing us this object, right, the project, it had like more three objects along with it, which were created, which was field
Yeah.
track
Mm.
sharing and
Yes.
could you open, yeah, this one. So whenever we enable the history,
Mm.
uh, then only this object would be created, correct? Like
Yes.
who
Yes.
whichever object has this field tracking enabled. Okay. And what about change event and the other object?
Yeah, we'll come back
Is
that later. Why? Because I have not uh, explained that part yet. So even if I explain now, it's will make
mm,
our sense to you. That's why I'm not explaining.
okay.
So I'll explain once we're covering those topics.
Mm, okay.
Any other questions?
Here, which option we need to click on to get the open resource page?
Okay, you have to go to file and then open resource. There you can
Okay.
search for any of the resource.
Okay. Thank
File, you have a open resource one. Okay, any other question?
Yeah, one quick,
Yeah,
and I promise this is the last one. So,
no problem.
uh,
You can ask, not an issue. Yeah.
yeah. So, whenever, can you go back to that, the org really quick? Yeah, here. So, I think in the beginning of the class, you were showing us how to log in as a different user, grant permission.
Yes.
So, how many ever users are there in our system?
Hmm.
Like for suppose if there are like 500 users and
Yeah,
I'm the system
this
admin.
is only for a developer edition. So there is some other setting
Hmm.
in our normal orgs where by default we can log in as any of the users. By because we cannot ask all the users and log in and
Yeah.
grant the permission. But it is for Salesforce, definitely we have to do. Even it's production org, whatever the org it is. If it is a Salesforce, when we're raising case and we're asking them to check something or check some issues, then definitely we have to do it. Why? Because the Salesforce team will not do every time accessing our org, right? Only when we raise the
Hmm.
case, only they do it. But usually this will be enabled for all user when you in the production. But in a developer org, you have to each user has to do it manually.
But that might vary based on your edition as well, right? So this is like a developer edition, so every
Correct,
user has to enable that. But if, yeah, if
correct.
you have like unlimited access, that might be by
Mm.
default. Okay.
Yes,
Yeah.
they'll be having a permission where if you have that permission, then you can log in as any of the user.
In the profile.
Yeah, in profile only we will be having that access. But it's in the relation we don't
Mm.
have that access.
Mm.
That's why this is the other way around where we can grant access.
Okay. Yeah, I'm good actually. Thanks, Paula.
Okay. Okay. Any other questions? Meanwhile, I try to just remember the password used for this user and we'll log in.